right. How's everyone doing? Hope everyone's having a great Monday, as usual. All right. Wow. Got a lot of interaction already. I love it. Got a lot of people in the chat today. YouTube Nebula, or YT Nebula, I should say. Got Scarlet in the chat. Cole. Thank you, Spore99, with the cool custom badge emoji. I love it. Ivory Rose. Or is it Rosie? I exist. Nice. E is in the chat. Slavic Scott, as usual, in the chat. Nice, nice. Roxy. I'm late for beginning? No, you're good. You're not late. Alright, I had to mute my phone there. Okay. Let's see. Bye. Good luck with the stream. I'll be back in 20-30 minutes. Perfect. E says hello, spooky one. Scarlet says hi. Jason the Ripper, John the Ripper. Smiley face or sunglasses emoji. Dylan says woo. Nice. Alright. Let's get us started. Let's get us started here. Let me get this pulled over here really quick. And I want to hit this button here. And let's get this. Okay, I think that's what I want. Okay. Alright. Let's get the stream going. Alright, got some good headphones. Nice. I'm flexible and have no spine. Hi. Very nice. That pretty MF. Hey. Alright. Let's get some good stories going. Let's see. Great question. Daddy's Demon. Great question. What stories we got on tonight? Tonight we're going to do some search and rescue stories. So, yeah. It's going to be good. Oh no, this thing froze again. Alright, I'm just gonna move this out of the way. I don't know why it likes to freeze. It's annoying. Let me, let's try to import it again. I just leave this one up, I guess. This one's pretty cool. I don't know why that one likes to freeze so much. Dang. Shannon Starr, I'm a skinwalker, and that's okay. Tonight we're doing search and rescue stories, and they got a little bit of everything in those, so you know it's gonna be good. Yeah. All right. Let's see. You like my voice? Thank you. I'm glad you like it. All right. Let me pull some stories up here for us. Scroll down. Okay, for those of you that want to know, this one's gonna be a couple hours. Or this week's video is gonna be a couple hours. It's gonna be a good one. I'm really excited. I like search and rescue ones. I'm also gonna do something a little different on this video. I'm going to do a little bit of recording of myself. And I'm going to provide a little bit of an intro, so you'll get to see what I look like in this next video. So hopefully you guys don't get too mad, or whatever, but yeah, I gotta try something. I gotta, you know, I feel like, I don't know, I feel like I gotta try it, so I'm going to give it a shot. Alright, let's see here. Where do I want to start on this one? Okay, I did read one I really liked. I think it was part 2 I was reading. Alright, let's see here. Okay, I don't want to read this one. I do want to read this one, though. Okay, here we go. Alright, here we go. A lot of my less outdoorsy friends want to know if I've ever seen the goat man while I've been out on calls. Unfortunately, or I guess rather fortunately, I've never had anything quite like that happen. But I guess the closest was the whole black-eyed man thing. But I didn't see anything. However, there was this one call where I had something kind of similar happen, but I'm not sure I'm willing to chalk it up to the goat man. We got in a report that an older woman had fainted along one of the trails and needed assistance getting back down to the main area. We hiked up to where she's at, and her husband is just beside himself. He runs well, I guess more jogs to us, and tells us that he was a little ways off the trail looking at something when his wife starts screaming behind him. He runs back at her, and she passes out on the trail. We get her on the backboard, and as we're getting her down to the welcome center, she comes to and starts screaming again. I calm her down and ask what had happened. I can't remember verbatim what she said, but essentially, this is what she said. She'd been waiting for her husband when she started to hear this really strange sound. She said it sounded something like a cat, but it was somehow off. She couldn't quite figure out why. She went a little ways ahead to try to hear it better, and it sounded like it was coming closer. She said the closer it got, the more uneasy she was, until she finally figured out what was wrong. I do remember the next part because it was so weird that I don't think I could forget it, even if I tried. It wasn't a cat. It wasn't a man. No, sorry. It wasn't a cat. It was a man saying the word meow over and over. Just meow, meow. But it wasn't a man. It couldn't have been, because I've never heard a man make his voice buzz like that. I thought my hearing aid was going out, but it wasn't. I adjusted it and it still sounded all buzzy. It was awful. He was coming closer, but I couldn't see him. And the closer he got, the more scared I was. And the last thing I remember was a shape coming out of the trees. I guess that's when I fainted. Now, obviously, I was a little perplexed as to why a guy would be out in the effing woods chanting meow at people. So once we get down the mountain, I tell my superior that I'm going to go search the area to see if I can find anything. He gives me the go-ahead, and I grab a radio and hike back to where she fainted. I don't see anyone, so I keep going about a mile more, and when I head back, I go off the trail to see if I can figure out where she saw him coming from. It's almost sunset by this point, and I don't have any desire to be out at night, alone. So I just sort of write it off and make a mental note to check it out again tomorrow. But as I'm heading back, I start to hear something in the distance. I stop. And I call out for anyone in the immediate area to identify themselves. The sound didn't come closer or get any louder, but it sounded exactly like a man saying, meow, in this really odd monotone. As comical as it makes it sound, it was almost like the guy on South Park with the electrolarynx, Ned. I go off the trail in the direction I think it's coming from, but I never seem to get any closer. It's almost like it's coming from all directions. Eventually, it just sort of fades out, and I end up going back to the welcome center. I didn't get any further reports like that, and even though I went back to that area, I never heard that exact sound again. I suppose it could have possibly been some kid out there messing with people, but even I have to admit, that was weird. Alright, let me find another one for you. Let me find another one. Okay, I don't want to read that one. Let me pull up the chat really quick. Alright. Napoleon Bonaparte, hello. Thank you. Thanks for being in the chat. Let's see. Let's go WM5E. Ripshy? I found a channel named Ripshy. Nice. Ratzeltank says, I need to be a disembodied voice. Interesting. That's right. I said it. Alright, let's see. Napoleon is in the chat. Alright, let's see here. Let me pull up another one for us here. That was a fun one. Alright, let's see here. What do we got? What do we got here? Oh, this one looks fun. Let's read this one. Alright, here we go. Alright, I gotta find the beginning of this one. Where does it start? Alright, I gotta find this one. Okay, here we go. I honestly don't know how I'd forgotten this story, but it is by far the scariest thing that had happened to me. I guess maybe I've tried so long to forget about it that it just didn't come to mind right away. As someone who spends literally all of their time out in the woods, you don't ever want to let yourself get scared of being alone or out in the middle of nowhere. That's why when you have experiences like this, you tend to forget about them and move on. This is, to date, the only thing that's ever made me really seriously consider if this job is the right one for me. I don't really like talking about it much, but I'll do my best I can to remember it all. Alright, where did I leave off? As I recall, this took place right at the end of spring. It was a typical lost child call. A 4-year-old girl was wandering away from her family's campsite and been missing for about 2 hours. Her parents were completely despondent and told us what most parents do. My kid would never wander away. She's so good about staying close. She's never done anything like this before, etc. We assured the parents that we'll do everything we can to find her, and we spread out in a standard search formation. I was partnered with one of my good buddies, and we were sort of casually holding conversations while we hiked. I know it sounds callous, but you sort of become desensitized when you've done this long enough. It becomes the norm, and I think to a certain extent you have to learn to desensitize yourself in order to work this job. We searched for a good 2 hours, going well beyond where we think she could have been, and we come out of a small valley when something makes us both stop in unison. We freeze, and we look at each other, and there's almost a sensation like a plane depressurizing. My ears pop, and I have this odd sensation of having dropped about 10 feet. I start to ask my buddy if he felt that, but before I can, we hear this loudest sound I'd ever heard in my life. It's almost like a freight train passing directly above us, but it's coming from every direction at once, including above and below us. He screams something to me, but I can't hear him over this deafening roar. Understandably freaked out, we all look around us, trying to find the source of the sound, but neither of us sees anything. Of course, my first thought is a landslide, but we're not near any cliffs, and even if we were, it would have hidden us by now. Oh, hold on one second. I forgot to add this. There we go. The sound goes on, and we're trying to yell to each other, but even standing close together, we can't hear anything but the sound. Then suddenly, as it starts, it stops, like someone threw a switch and cut it off. We stand there for a second, perfectly still, and slowly, the normal sounds of the woods come back. He asked me what the F just happened, but I just kind of shrug. And we stand there looking at each other for a minute. I get on the radio and ask if anyone else heard what it sounded like the end of the world, but no one else hears it, even though we're all within shouting distance of each other. My buddy and I just sort of shrug it off and keep going. About an hour later, we all check up on the radios and no one's found the little girl. Most of the time we won't search when it gets dark, but because we don't have any kind of lead on her, a few of us decide to keep going, including me and my buddy. We keep close together, and we're calling out for her every couple of minutes. At this point, I'm hoping beyond hope that we find her, because while I may not like kids, the idea of them being all alone in the dark is awful. The woods can be an intimidating place for kids in the daylight. At night, well, it's a whole different beast. But we're not seeing any signs of her, or getting any responses, and around midnight, we decide to turn around and head back to the rendezvous point. We're about halfway back when my buddy stops and shines his light to the right of us, into a really thick deadfall of a group of dead trees. I asked him if he heard a response, but he just told me to be quiet a second and listen. I do. And in the distance, I can hear what sounded like a kid crying. We both call the little girl's name and listen for any kind of response, but it's just this really faint crying. We head in the direction of this deadfall and go around it, calling her name over and over. As we get closer to the crying, I start getting this really weird feeling in my gut. I tell my buddy that something isn't right. He tells me he feels the same way, but we can't figure out what it is. We stop where we are and we call the girl's name again. And at that same time, we both figure it out. The crying is on a loop. It's the same little hitching sob, then wail, then quiet hiccup, repeated over and over. It's exactly the same every time, and without saying another word, we both take off running. It's the only time I've ever lost my composure like that, but something about it was so incredibly wrong, and neither of us wanted to stay out there anymore. When we got back to the rendezvous, we asked if anyone else had heard anything strange, but no one else knew what we were talking about. I know it's sort of anticlimactic, but that call left me up for quite some time. As for the little girl, we never found a trace of her. We keep an eye out for her and all the other people we've never found, but frankly, I doubt we'll ever find her. Of all the missing person call I've gone out on, only a handful have ever resulted in a complete disappearance, meaning no trace of the person and nobody's ever found. But sometimes finding a body just leads to more questions than answers. Here are some of the bodies we've found that have become infamous in our team. A teenage boy whose remains recovered almost a year after he vanished. We found the top of his skull, 2 finger bones, and his camera, almost 40 miles from where he was last seen. The camera, sadly, was destroyed. The pelvis of an older man who had vanished a month earlier. That was all that we found. The lower jaw and a right foot of a 2-year-old boy on the highest peak of a ridge in the southern part of the park. The body of a 10-year-old girl with Down syndrome, almost 20 miles from where she'd vanished. She had died of exposure 3 weeks after going missing, and all of her clothes were intact except for her shoes and jacket. There were berries and cooked meat in her stomach when they did the autopsy. The coroner said it appeared as if someone had been taking care of her. No suspects were ever identified. A frozen body of a 1-year-old baby found a week after vanishing in a hollow trunk of a tree 10 miles from the area he was last seen. There was fresh milk found in his stomach, but his tongue was gone. A single vertebrae and a right kneecap of a 3-year-old girl found in the snow, almost 20 miles from the campground her family had been at that previous summer. Now on to a couple of stories my friends told me. I mentioned that you were all interested in the stairs, and you're in luck. He had a close encounter with them. Though he doesn't have any explanation for them, he does have a bit more experience with them than I do. My buddy has been a search and rescue officer for about 7 years. He started when he was a junior in college, and he had a very similar experience when he first encountered the stairs. His trainer told him almost the same thing mine did, which was never to go near, touch, or ascend them. For the first year, he did just that, but apparently, his curiosity got the better of him. And on one call, he broke away from the line and went to go check a set out for himself. He said they were about 10 miles from the path where a teenage girl had vanished, and the dogs were following a scent. He was on his own, lagging behind the main group when he saw a set of stairs off to his left. They looked like they were from a new house, because the carpeting was pristine and white. He said that as he got closer, he didn't feel any different, or heard any weird noises. He was expecting something to happen, like bleeding from his ears or collapsing, but he got right up next to them and didn't feel anything. The only thing he said that was odd was that there was absolutely no debris on the steps. No dirt, leaves, or dust. Anything. And there didn't appear to be any signs of animals or insects activity in the immediate area, which he found strange too. It was less like things were avoiding them and more like they just happened to be in a relatively barren part of the forest. He touched the stairs, and he didn't feel anything, except that sort of sticky feeling you get from new carpet. Making sure his radio was on, he climbed them. He said it was terrifying because the way they'd been stigmatized. He wasn't really sure what was going to happen to him. He joked that half of him expected to be teleported to some other dimension, and the other half was watching for a UFO to come down to swoop him up. But he got to the top with a little event, and he stood there, looking around. But he said the longer he stood on top of the top steps, the more he felt like he was doing something very wrong. He described it as the feeling you get if you were a part of the government building you have no business being in, as if someone was going to come and arrest you or shoot you in the back of the head at any second. He tried to brush it off, but the feeling got stronger and stronger, and that's when he realized that he couldn't hear anything anymore. The sounds of the forest were gone, and he couldn't hear his own breathing. It was like some kind of weird, awful tinnitus, but more oppressive. He climbed back down and rejoined the search, and he didn't mention what he'd done, but he said the weirdest part came after. His trainer was waiting back at the welcome center after the search ended for the day, and he cornered my buddy before he could leave. He said his trainer had this look of intense anger. He asked him what was wrong. "You went up them, didn't you?" My buddy said it wasn't a phrase as much as a question. He said it wasn't phrased as a question. He asked how his trainer knew. The trainer just shook his head. "Because we didn't find her. The dogs lost her scent." My buddy asked what that had to do with anything. The trainer asked how long he'd been on the stairs, and my buddy said no more than a minute. The trainer gave him this really awful, almost dead-eyed look, and told him that if he ever went up the set of stairs again, he'd be fired. Immediately. The trainer walked away, and I guess he never answered any of the questions my buddy asked about the stairs. My buddy has been involved in a lot of missing persons cases where there's never been a trace of them found. I mentioned David Pilates, and my buddy said that he can confirm that those stories are, for the most part, accurate. He said that most of the time, if the person isn't found right away, they're either never found, or they're found weeks, months, or years later, in places that they possibly couldn't have gotten to. Huh. Wow, that was longer than I expected it. Alright, let me scroll back up into the chats. Thank you, Sport99. When is Goatman 2 coming out? It's been like 6 months. That's a great question. That is a good question. Not quite sure. Are we ever going to get a sequel to Adam, the Alien? Which one is Adam, the Alien? I'm trying to remember that one. I don't think I remember that one. I don't think I remember that one. Let's see here. See, not a missing child. The crying in the woods is always bad. Me personally. Lard donated $50. Personal opinion on green beans. I love green beans, actually. I'm a big fan of green beans. For those of you that are not familiar with the live stream, Lard is the resident Giga Chad who always donates and always has great questions about beans. I personally love green beans. I think they go great with mashed potatoes and any type of meat. I'm not a big fan of green bean casseroles, but I do love green beans. Probably my more favorite beans. Yeah. What do you think about them, Lard? What are your opinions? Let's see here. Let's see. Valid. Let's see. Let's see. Daniel's dad. Let's see. I don't know what's going on here. If society is entropic, then why did my dad leave? If society is entropic, I'm not sure. I'm not sure, Daniel. Great question. I don't know. I do not know. Finding bones in any other... yeah, finding bones is rather creepy. Alright, let me find another story for us to read. I wanna save some of these for the video. That way you guys aren't completely bored. Let's see here. What do we got for you? What do you guys want to hear? I got a bunch of stories for you guys. A bunch of them, I say. I really like this one. I want to read this one again. It's one of my favorites. I don't know why I like it so much, but it's just so dang good. There's two I really like. I like them a lot. Oh, this is long. I didn't realize how long this one was. Alright, I don't want this one. Okay, I do want to read this story, though. I like Gurgles and Bugman. That's a good one. I want to read this one. Because it's good. I think I like it a lot because it's like, it kind of reminds me of something that I've seen before. And I think it's cool. I like it a lot. Alright, let's see. Yeah, crying in the woods, me personally, if I heard crying in the woods, I feel like I would run towards it. Or I'd run away. A lot of times when I'm in the woods, I typically have a gun on me when I'm in the woods. But if I didn't have a gun on me, I'd probably still run towards it. I'm not very bright when it comes to the woods. It depends if I've been listening to scary stories, to be honest. Find human bones in a forest that you keep going to. Smart idea. I did hear a story, actually, from one of my friend's dads. He said when the Challenger spaceship exploded and re-entered the Earth, they had to find all the parts to the spaceship. And so they had to go to, like, these wooded area, like these wooded, swampy areas to find these parts. And they found like 30 people, like tied to trees and chained to like. Duck Lord donated $50.01. Just wanted to one up Lard for no reason. Wow. Wow. That's intense. Thanks, Duck Lord. That's awesome. I appreciate that. I appreciate you both, you guys. You guys are awesome. Killing it. That, let's see. Double barrel shotgun. Ayo. Got a little bit of competition going. Banshee's driving. Nice. Cannibals. Cannibals are pretty freaky, I'll be honest. Wait a minute. What is going on here? What is going on here? Lard. $50.02. I ain't having that. Uh-oh. It's getting a little dangerous in here. Getting very dangerous right now. This is crazy. I'm fearing for my life. I feel like I should just get another story going before you guys start wilding out, if you know what I'm saying. Lard is killing it. He can't be topped. My dude's a legend. All right, Gurgles and Bugman. Here we go. Let me get some good scary music going before I forget. All right, here we go. Gurgles and Bugman. After my last experience, my parents reminded me of another story from my childhood. When you're 5, your mind lacks the experience to make informed judgments or connect things which aren't obvious. Over the years, the details get fuzzy and forgotten. Speaking with my parents the other day, they cleared the cobwebs, burying the story. I remember now, much too clearly, the story of Gurgles and Bugman. I just started kindergarten that year. Everyone's a friend when you're 5, so I had no shortages of classmates. But coming from a poor family, I didn't get to see much of them outside of school. My parents spent all of their waking hours trying to make ends meet and didn't have time to ferry me from house to house. So I spent my early years mostly keeping to myself, playing with the random assortment of knickknacks from the shelf in my room. Being short of money gave my family a habit of hoarding, so they hated to throw out anything. One particular item on the shelf was a small, old-fashioned TV set. A wooden veneer box about 2 feet wide by a foot tall. It had a curved glass screen that took up half the front panel. Beside the screen was a large chrome dial, used to switch channels. At the top sat an antenna formed by 2 terribly twisted wires. When my boredom made me turn it on, it usually just got static and snow on the glowing black and white screen. I twist the heavy clicking dial, hoping to pick up some local broadcasts. Mostly it would be some ghostly images and incoherent sound fragments. But one channel was always crystal clear. It was the Gurgles and Bugman show. Gurgles was a clown, but not a common one. He wore a thin black suit that draped his tall, skinny body with a matching tie, and oversized novelty clown shoes to complete his distinctive outfit. His pupils were completely black, like polished ebony marbles, with no trace of white around them. Black face paint around those eyes and across his cheeks and mouth made him look like a maniac. A manic, grinning skeleton. It was only the crazy crop of curly hair sprouting off the sides of his head that gave him a more human look. As much as Gurgles freaked me out, Bugman scared me much more. He was short and round, like a hunchback dwarf, with a dark cape. He had prosthetic coverings his eyes to make him look like a fly, and a mouth that was rotated 90 degrees and open from side to side. The show itself was like a candid camera, with pranks played on unsuspecting people. It would always start with Gurgles and a Bugman hidden away at someone's home. Gurgles would face the camera, staring at you, his bony finger touching his lips. When the unsuspecting star of the show came into view, a laugh track would begin to play. You would see them go about their nightly routines, oblivious to the conspiracy that Gurgles and Bugman had involved us in. When we'd see them making dinner or lounging around watching TV with their family, or quietly doing their homework, then watch as Gurgles and Bugman stole their pen or moved their glass or made things disappear behind their backs. The camera angles would change as Gurgles and Bugman shifted their hiding place from the dark corners of the room, to the cupboards, to the ceiling, or under the furniture, all the while looking back at you and winking. The closer they got, the louder and more laughter from the soundtrack became. Eventually, when everyone went to sleep, a victim would be chosen for their prank. Waiting in the closet or under the bed once their victim fell asleep, Bugman would crawl out gently and climb in beside them. His jaw would open sideways and out would come a sharp straw that he'd use to stick into the person's neck. This always paralyzed their victim, because sometimes you could see them struggle if they woke and saw Gurgles and Bugman on top of them. The laugh track would then be extra loud and uproarious for those few times the victims woke. Gurgles would make faces at the camera while the audience laughed, and Bugman would use his straw to drink from the person's neck. The victim stopped struggling after a few minutes, and the laughter would turn into claps and cheering. With Bugman's finished, Gurgle's face would fill the whole screen with his impossibly wide, sharp-toothy grin. He'd then whisper in an eerie voice, "See you soon." The way those all-black eyes pierced through the screen always gave me chills. I hated the show, but would always be too afraid to go near the TV while it was running. One day, the TV mysteriously disappeared from my room. My parents told my 5-year-old self that they sold it to pay some bills. I accepted that without question. I was kind of glad it was gone. But yesterday, when I asked them about the TV again, they exchanged nervous glances, then filled in some of the missing gaps from my childhood. Halfway through the year, Derek, a classmate I didn't know very well, had died in horrific circumstances. He was murdered in his bed with a stab wound to his neck. He was murdered with no evidence of a break-in was ever found. So his distraught parents were taken into custody as the primary suspects. They denied all the allegations against them. At that time, Mrs. Nolan, my teacher, told her class I'd apparently explained to her that Derek couldn't have been dead, because I just saw him and his family on the Gurgles and Bugman show the day before. When Mrs. Nolan mentioned to my parents what I'd said, they immediately taken the TV from my room, driven it to a junkyard, and had it burned to nothing but ashes and molten metal. That TV was in my room because it was always broken. It was never plugged in this whole time. It sat on my shelf. Whatever I saw on that screen, it wasn't from a station. So, that's my story of Gurgles and Bugman. But I'm not sure if that's really the end, though. After all, do Gurgles and Bugman still perform their nightly show for some unsuspecting viewer somewhere in the world? And if so, who will be their next star? I freaking love that story. Okay, I'm gonna check the chat. I'm afraid. Holy cats. We got a lot of donations here. Dang. Okay, let's see. Just wanted to okay, I'm just gonna go back and look at all the different ones. Just wanted to one-up Lard for no reason. Lard said I ain't having that. And then Duck Lord said, on God, you want some of this for $50.03. Lard wants to smoke. This is escalating. Shannon Star says, by the way, I'm a vegetarian. Eve cracks me up. This is getting out of hand. Duck Lord says, dang bro. I'll censor it for those at home. $55. This is being crazy. Someone's bank account manager is having some questions. Let's see. Gonna get the calls from the bank. Allard responds from the 55 to the 60 saying, I'm going to be real, you don't want this. Yes, this is, I do have no idea. That is correct. I have no idea what is going on here. Let's see. These two are going to have a very nice email. Let's see. The legends settle, indeed. Oh, dang. And he said he was lying. $100 donation from Duck Lord. Dang, you guys are just bosses. Unbelievable. Nice. Duck Lord, I had to say it. But I've been defeated. My bank called him if I was hacked. Oh, no. That's awesome. Allard has been defeated. I'm sure he'll come back next week. Awesome. Nice. Duck Lord is the victor on this stream. Legendary day for the Spoopy Society, indeed. Indeed. You guys just slayed it right now. Alright. Let's see. Yeah, I just read the stories. I don't know what's going on. You guys are killing it. Let's see here. Should I read a long one for you guys? I feel like you guys have been killing it. I have to deliver. Let's see. What do you guys want to hear? Let me find something for you. I have to deliver now. The battles of the Titans in the background, and I'm just oblivious. Alright, let me find a good one. Have I read this one for you guys? I don't know if I read this one. Did I read the Olam one? Olam? It's titled Olam. I don't know if I read this one for you guys. I can't remember. I read so many. I can read it though. Let's see. Yeah, you guys are killing it. Let's see. Spoopy Society. Let's see. Don't quote that. Let's see. Alright, let's see what I got here. Let me find something. Okay. This one's an interesting one. Let me know what you guys think. Let me read this for you really quick. Right quick. This one's titled Olam. In December of 1978, two American... Oh, hold on. One second. Let me pull this up. Here we go. There we go. In December of 1978, two American businessmen were taken captive by the Iranian government on the grounds of bribery. These men were employed by Ross Perot, president of Electronic Data Systems, who would later run for president. However, the United States government gave him no help in freeing his employees. Instead, he personally recruited a group of his executives and sent them into Iran with retired U.S. Army officials to aid them in freeing his captured employees. The attempt at jailbreak failed, and the group eventually tracks down the captives and escapes with them to Turkey. At least that's what the people believe, as that was the story told. This wasn't quite what happened. Ross Perot didn't send a group of his executives to free his men. He sent a group of executives to hire my organization. At the time, I worked for Sercerin International, a private military corporation based in South Africa. Perot's executives paid a hefty sum of money for my group to enter Iran and retrieve his precious employees. 21 men were dispatched from South Africa to Tehran for this mission. Tehran was in the middle of widespread riots due to the verging Iranian Revolution. In short terms, crap was blowing up everywhere. I was serving as a dispatcher and a technician. A quick visit to the prison that they were reported to be at proved that they were not there. It was in shambles. A little research confirmed that the Iranians had moved the prisoners into the mountainside outside Tehran and was likely to be executed later. News articles revealed the location of the mountain and the cave network they would be inside. That night, all but 3 of the operatives in the area were sent to attack that mountain and retrieve the 2 Americans. The rest of the prisoners and guards were expendable. The attack went into the letter, went to the letter, aside from the fact that there was no resistance. The caves were defended, but gunfire and screaming could be heard from inside the caves, and it sounded like we may be too late. The road led to the cave network was blocked by a security checkpoint, and our men quickly killed the worthless guards and proceeded on their way. But once they entered the caves, it was clear that this was not anything they'd encountered. Brutalized corpses lined the walls of the cave. They had all died from varieties of injuries, and none by gunshots. Some heads had been split in half, their brains and blood leaking from their skulls. Some had no heads, and their torsos were covered in blood. Some had their legs broken backwards, so that they just kicked themselves on their stomach. One in particular seemed to have his spine ripped from his body, and was slouched on the cave, discarded. AK-47s dotted the cave, but some gunfire continued deeper in. The paramilitary continued inside. The corpses continued. A few men came running out to them, and they were shot down. The gunfire ceased as the men reached the epicenter of the cave. It appeared to be a home of some sort. It had a bed, crude appliances, and all sorts of other fixtures. Ornamental weapons hung on the wall, and in the center of the chamber stood a man, illuminated by gas lamps around the room. The soldiers' flashlights. He was no shorter than 6 feet, an impressive height for this area of the world. His back was to the entrance. His fingers were distorted into possible figures, and the sight of them alone made the men cringe. But this man had more worries than his fingers. His arms were charred a red and black, and his spine was visible through his brown and black skin. I don't mean the outline, I mean the spine itself was sticking out from his back. It was whitewashed. The man screamed. This was an unforgettable, bone-chilling scream that sounded like the scream of a young girl. One soldier pointed his rifle and fired it at him, but the man whirled around and the bullet stopped in midair and fell to the ground. The front of the man was more terrifying than the back. His torso was covered in scars, but it seemed that he had branded a phrase or a name into his chest, on the ribcage. It read, Olam. The man had a face, but barely. His skin was dark brown, but parts of his head were missing flesh, revealing the moon-white skull. But then, the men heard a voice run inside their own minds. It spoke in a Turkish accent, and said, "Run." Olam's mouth never moved. In fact, he had very little in the way of a mouth. No lips, just flesh and rotted teeth. Oh, just flesh and rotted teeth. His eyes were a shining blue. No pupils, just blue. A scimitar then flew off its mount and cut one of the soldiers' heads off before sticking it into the cave's wall. Some men opened fire, some ran out of the cave. Out of the reported dozen that stood transfixed by Olam, 2 survived. His eyes seemed to grow in intensity, and the heads of the 2 soldiers burst into red mists of blood. More weapons came off the wall, scimitars and katanas. Olam created an array of weapons before him. The men were pierced by another voice within their minds. "You didn't listen." With that, the men sank to the floor and screamed. They held their heads and wailed a final wail as their heads bursted and their lungs collapsed. Olam stopped their torment when 2 remained. They turned and ran from the caves. As it turned out, Perot's men had escaped the prison. They were on the road down from the caves when the remaining soldiers found them. Within a week, they had returned to America, and Perot's executives were quote-unquote heroes. They even got a book and a TV deal. The paramilitary, including myself, returned to South Africa. Most of us quit after what had happened. I was outside the cave in a jeep and heard the events inside of the cave on the two-way radio and read the debriefings. I never went in further than the entrance, and I saw the bodies. The men that did see Olam mostly went insane afterwards and had nightmares of existence. I since lost contacts with them. What of his existence? Olam, that is. Olam was most certainly a man at some point. It seemed that the prisoners disturbed his home and he slaughtered them. Olam means death in Turkish. How did he become what he was? Was he always telepathic? And for other matters, Olam lived in the mountains in Southwest Asia. There are a lot of mountains in the region, with both terrorists and Western soldiers ascending these mountains to battle. What if they uncover more Olams? What if there's an entire army of them out there, dotted around the hills and peaks of the region? It's been 30 years since Olam was seen. What if he isn't in Tehran at all? What if he moved on? Traditional garb for that area could easily cover his afflictions. With a robe and scarf, he'd be completely inconspicuous. Where could he be hiding now? What do you guys think of that one? I thought that was a fun one. Let's see here. Beans have been beaned. Let's see, but without the cut, that donation. Let's see here. The props, both donators. That was insane. I'll have to leave this one. Normally I put them on the live streams on private, but I had to leave this one on public. This was too epic of a stream. It's not about the money. It's not about the money, Batman. It's about who's on top. It's about sending a message. Yeah, hats off to both gentlemen. I was impressed. Needless to say, Lord and Doug Lord have impressed me. And I believe I owe you guys another story. Scarlett says, what a great story. Yeah, I thought that one was good. I know a lot of times when, like, things get a little mystical, it can ruin, I don't know, the horror aspect of things, but I thought it was good. Let's see. Buffering. Alright, let's see what I got here for you guys. Let me find another one. Another one. I don't know if I've read this one before. What do you guys want? What do you guys want to hear? I always say that and I just pick a random one. I want to know what you guys want. I have an idea of one. Let me see if I can find it. Let's see here. What's this one? Oh, I like this one a lot. Okay, I got a good one. Let me see if I got any suggestions. No one suggests anything. Okay, I got a good one for you guys. I need to do this one. I need to like make this one in its own video and add like scary sound effects. Let's see. Bella May says wendigo. All right, let me see if I can find one. A story where the monster isn't specifically mentioned but implied. Monstro decided to drop by. Thank you. Glad you dropped by. Let's see. A wendigo. Where a monster isn't specifically mentioned. I do have a good one. Let's see. Here. Did you see the one I wrote earlier? I think I did see it. I need to go back and double check though. Like it's described, but really, really vague. I only have one that's like that, and it is a wendigo one, but I've read it a ton. I want to find another one for you though. Let's see if I can find another one. A wendigo. I've got a bunch of them that are like that bunch of them. Let me see here. Let me find a... I am due for another Wendigo video. I am. I will be honest. I'm due for another one. Yeah, a couple people mentioned Wendigo. Okay, did you see the one earlier? Like, if it's true, I really paid. Okay, let's see if I can find one. Alright, it's gonna take me a hot second. Let me see if I can find it. Alright. So I have Operation Wendigo, but that one's really long. Is it this one? I can't remember if it's this one or not. I cannot remember. No, this isn't it. Dang it. I do have one for you, though. It is a Wendigo one. And it is vaguely described. Where is that one? I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna find it. Okay. Okay. I have another one. This one, it's not the one I'm thinking of. But I have another one. This one, I guess, technically is a Wendigo one. And I feel like I owe you guys. How about a walking skin story? That's funny. Walking skin. I could work with that. That sounds pretty scary. Okay. This one is titled Alaskan Cabin Wendigo. Let me change the background music a little bit. Let's try this one. Okay. Alaskan Cabin Wendigo. Let's see. I would like to see the more of the Boy Scout story. That one was really well done. Yeah, that one is a good one. Possum, join the stream. Nice. I'm glad you made it. Morgan Underhill. Can't make it here often, but I love all your Skinwalker videos. Thank you. Alright, let me get this one. Here we go. Alaskan Cabin Wendigo. I grew up wealthy all my life, due to my family owning a fish processing plant in Alaska. Because of this, I would often visit up in Alaska in a private plane that my family owned in order to overlook the operation every couple of months. Hold on. This might be too loud, sorry. I mute this one. I'm so sorry. Alright, here we go. I'll restart. Alaskan Cabin Wendigo. I grew up wealthy all my life due to my family owning a fish processing plant up in Alaska. Because of this, I would often visit up in Alaska in a private plane that my family owned in order to overlook the operation every couple of months. We recently hired on a new project manager, and unfortunately he had been causing some issues recently, which required me to make my trip more frequently. On these trips, I would be able to land on my family's private airstrip on our 300-acre land, which was next to my family's cabin and air hangar. This may sound a bit eccentric, but when you fly as much as I do, and in all honesty, I was probably saving money traveling. For the record, I have my pilot's license and have been able to fly since I was 18. One of the perks of being born into a family that is able to provide the necessary resources to fly at such a young age. During the time of this story, my plane was an older model that my father learned to fly on some time ago, and I was in the market for a new one. I had the money for a new plane, but I just got behind on some of my tasks and didn't have time to find a plane that could take the beating that my trips would require. Nevertheless, to say that this caused me to exercise an unnecessary risk of flying a plane that should have been probably scrapped at this point. I got a call at 11 a.m. in the morning and was told that the project manager had no-showed for the past 3 days. I was furious. I made arrangements to fire this recent hire and restart the hiring process. I was frustrated in knowing that I would have to restart the hiring process, which I really didn't want to do since I'd have to do this in person. For reference, it was early winter, which made my travels all the more difficult. I tried to avoid the Alaskan winters whenever I could, but due to the events at my factory, I was forced to be there. I got a forecast of the weather to see if it would be possible for me to land my aircraft at my personal landing strip, which would seem questionable. I would not be able to land my aircraft if there was much snow on the airstrip, but I was hoping that it was still early enough in the season that snow hadn't fallen yet. I spent the rest of the day getting preparations done on the aircraft and calling a handful of the plant managers, letting them know what the plans were. I took off from the local airstrip that was about 20 minutes from my house in California and made my way to my Alaskan cabin that was about 7 hours away. I had made this trip hundreds of times since I was young. I even made this flight drunk a few times. Needless to say, I was confident of my abilities to land this plane, even if there was an inch or two of snow. The flight dragged as it normally did. The sun crept across the sky and dipped behind the horizon with just under an hour of flight left. Normally I don't fly on such a short notice, but this was a business emergency. Unfortunately, this sense of emergency caused me to rush in preparations, and I was beginning to worry about the snow on the runway. I finally reached the cabin and I did a flyby to double check the area for snow. It looked like it just started to snow, but it looked landable. I came in extra slow, but the landing went better than it should have. Like I said, I've done this thousands of times, so a small amount of snow wouldn't affect me too much. I stepped out of the aircraft and opened the hangar and pulled in my plane. My hangar next to my cabin is normally left unlocked due to it being out in the middle of nowhere. It was capable of being locked, but in the cold times like now, I preferred to leave it unlocked to make my time in the snow as small as possible. I pulled the plane in and made my way over to the cabin. Quick backstory about the cabin. The cabin was built by my father's grandpa. I obviously didn't meet him since he passed before I was even born, but he was a real man's man. He originally built this cabin as a small hunting lodge to hunt moose and bear during hunting season, but my father slowly added on more and more to the lodge to make it a decent-sized cabin to live in. That being said, we had wildlife everywhere. Bears were common, but they were always more afraid of you than you were of them. They wouldn't get big enough in this area to really be an issue. However, bears will never turn down an easy snack. Thus, keeping the cabin locked was essential. The nearest Walmart was about 3 hours away, which made stocking up the pantry an issue at times. It was always key to leave the pantry full of non-perishable foods whenever you left the cabin, so you'd have some food when you'd come back the next season. If a bear found its way inside, it could have plenty to eat. One thing that we used to deter bears was a bear mat, which is much like a doormat, but had nails facing upwards to prevent nails from bears coming in. This sounds a bit cruel, but bears' paws are very rough and would only do enough damage to scare them off. I walked over to my cabin door, and to my surprise, the bear mat and most of my porch is covered in a black liquid. Blood, when dried or frozen, can appear to be black, but it still caught me off guard. I noticed on the door and windows black handprints. Did a person try to come into my cabin and step on my bear mat? I stood mystified outside in the snow, only for a minute before the cold air snapped me out of it and ushered me inside. I quickly turned on all the lights in the heat, still puzzled with what I saw. The bear mat was not would not be able to penetrate most shoes due to the nails being too close together, due to the displacement of the weight, which must mean whoever stepped on the bear mat was either extremely heavy or was barefoot. Who had found my cabin was most importantly. Why were they barefoot? I was not able to shake that feeling that someone could still be nearby, like a dark cloud just hanging overhead. I did a quick walk around the cabin, and I didn't see anything that really disturbed me since the last time I visited, and I felt my anxiety slowly ease away, but not completely. All the doors were still locked, as well as the windows, but I did see more black handprints on other windows. I guessed whoever this was must have been here for a few months, and definitely not recently. This helped me come to the conclusion that I was safe in my cabin. I got situated and got ready for bed, since the next day I would be running around a good bit. The night was cold and the wind howled, but nothing happened. I woke up early the next morning and got the day started. I was on my laptop for the first hour or two before I went out into the hangar and got into an old truck that we left out there. Whenever I leave, I make sure to put the bear mat out. I drove into town, which is always a long drive, but it was a beautiful day with the sun slowly rising. The Alaskan wilderness always reminded me how beautiful Earth really was. I arrived into town just before noon, and we made our way into the processing plant. Once there, I felt the energy of my employees shift from horsing around to strict business. I could tell that they were used to goofing off while I wasn't there, which I didn't really mind, as long as they got their stuff done. I did a quick tour of the plant and went from meeting to meeting before I left. I went into Walmart and bought a bunch of food I could heat up, since I felt like I'd be here a while before I found a replacement project manager. I made the long drive home, and at this time the sun had already set. My headlights illuminated only so much of the road since it was an older model truck. I made it home and started unloading the groceries. The dried blood that I had yet to remove from the door reminded me of the unwelcome guest that was once here. I felt a small chill go down my spine, but I brushed it off. I finally unloaded and parked the truck inside the hangar, and while leaving, I contemplated locking the hangar. This is something I haven't done in a while, but with the black handprints on the door, my mind began to wander. I ignored the thought and left the hangar unlocked. At this point, I realized that the snow had gained a few inches from when I last left this morning. While walking inside, I half expected to see some animal tracks in the snow, but nothing. Just a clear blanket of fresh snow. I went inside and started a fire in the fireplace. The crackling of the burning wood added a calming background noise as the cabin began to warm. I hopped on my laptop looking at emails for new candidates to hire for the position in the kitchen that was next to the window, when I thought I saw something move outside. My heart skipped a beat, but I then realized it was just the flames of the fireplace that danced off the window. I went back to my laptop, and before I knew it, it was late. I let the fire die as I slept on the couch downstairs. I woke up in the middle of the night to a loud sound hitting the kitchen window. The sound not only woke me, but caused me to jump and knock over my laptop. More frustrated than I was scared, I picked up my laptop and placed it on my counter, and I went to investigate the sound that woke me. At first glance, the window appeared to be normal, still having black handprints I kept forgetting to remove, but something caught my eye. I noticed that there was a handprint that didn't fit with the black ones, mainly because it was red, but secondly, it was slowly dripping down from the outside pane. This handprint was fresh. My mind, still groggy from being torn from such a peaceful slumber, was not able to comprehend the meaning of this. A feeling of immense dread hit my stomach like a ton of bricks when I finally realized that someone was outside watching me sleep. I went upstairs to my nightstand where I had a loaded .44 Magnum for any bears that might find their way inside, and I turned on my porch lights. To my horror, the once fresh snow was now clearly disturbed and bloodied. It appeared that whoever was outside had circled my cabin and peered in multiple windows. My hands sweated as I gripped the rubber grip of the pistol. I was tempted to go outside, but the cold and my nerves got the best of me, and I stayed inside. I didn't get much sleep that night, but I managed to get a few hours with my pistol nearby. I woke up in the morning later than normal due to the events prior that evening. I hurried through my morning ritual and got ready. Once I went through my emails and had my coffee, I went outside to see that the freshly covered snow had covered the trail from the midnight watcher. I then looked at the windows and the doors and cleaned them quickly with some paper towels and degreaser I kept under the sink. The blackened marks were oddly thicker than I would attribute to blood. This was almost like a thick tar of some kind. I quickly removed the marks and went to my hangar to get my truck. The hangar, despite being unlocked, was undisturbed, which pleasantly surprised me. I got in the truck and made my journey into town. During my drive, I couldn't stop thinking about the night before, and how I felt so violated to have someone watch me sleep. What kind of person would want to watch me sleep out in the cold? Why were their hands bloodied? Did they try to come in and step on the bear mat again? This made me shiver, as the thought of someone trying to enter with me sleeping right there really bothered me. My day continued to pass slowly, with the night always lingering in the back of my mind. The more I would dread it, the quickly it would seem to come. After an unproductive day of interviews, I had to venture back out to the lonely wilderness cabin that I now feared rather than embraced. I arrived home and looked at the snow before pulling into the hangar to see if my nightly watcher had returned. The snow showed no signs of anything unusual, so I proceeded to the hangar. I exited the truck, and instead of leaving the hangar unlocked, I decided to lock it. Whatever was out there last night had gotten inside my head. I spent the nighttime upstairs rather than down in my kitchen. I wanted to remove any possibility of unwanted eyes watching me. The wind howled through the thick trees, which every now and then almost sounded like a scream of some kind of animal. That night went on without a hitch, although my pistol stayed nearby. I woke up the next morning and looked outside to see that the snow had gained another foot, but thankfully remained undisturbed. A slight relief to my frantic mind assured me that whatever was lingering around my cabin had surely left. It then dawned on me that with the new foot of snow, it would make it difficult to take off on my runway. My options were to wait out the winter, or to drive to the nearest airport, which was a day's journey away up north, and I'd have to leave my plane here. I was distracted with trying to set up plans in order to get back home to California that I left the cabin in a hurry and forgot to put the bear mat back in front of the door. I didn't realize it until I was halfway into the city, and I wasn't driving back just to move a mat a few feet. I figured that I'd be okay, and that most of the bears should have started hibernation. Work went by pretty quickly, and I had a good productive day. I had a few interviews that I felt good about, and I had some solid candidates on my hands. The big thing I was looking for was an experienced and reliable personnel. As much as I enjoyed coming up to Alaska, I was not wanting to be here more than I needed to be. I drove back to the cabin, and I started to see the cabin lights were now on. Normally I was pretty good at remembering to turn those off, but I'm not perfect. I pulled up to the porch area to see the front door was wide open. I definitely didn't leave the door open. My pistol was left inside, but I thought ever so briefly that I'd be able to sneak in and grab it before searching the rest of the cabin. Before I was able to reach the door, I was able to hear grunts and sounds coming from upstairs. It sounded like heavy grunts or labored breathing. I wanted to call out, but my instincts told me to be quiet. Until I had my gun at least. Thankfully, I left my pistol downstairs, which was not too difficult for me to grab. I made sure the gun was loaded and I took the safety off, and I decided to see what was up the stairs. I slowly ventured upstairs with my pistol gripped tightly. I slowly reached my room, where the sounds were much clearer. I opened the door quickly to surprise whoever was in my room, but when I opened my door, I was completely horrified to see that blood was everywhere. It was too much for my mind to process at first. I didn't know what I was looking at, but they were these human-like creatures eating a small moose on the ground. The creature resembled a human, but its limbs were long and it had horns on the top of its head. Its skin was white but withered away and was covered in blood. It looked rough. I cried out in horror as I looked upon this demonic creature feeding upon this moose on the ground. The creature looked up quickly, bearing long, sharp teeth that had flesh still inside. Not knowing what to do, I aimed the pistol at the creature and fired it until it was empty. The creature took a good number of shots, but only reacted to the last one that happened to kill it. The creature was able to get about 10 feet or so until my second to last bullet connected with its horned skull and killed it violently. The creature began to spasm all over the floor while spewing blood everywhere, or what I thought was blood. As I watched the creature, it slowly changed shape from this grotesque beast to something that began to look more and more human. This made me more afraid to see what was now appearing to be a lifeless man laying on the floor. What just happened? How did it change from this demonic beast to this old-looking man? I frantically paced the upstairs, not knowing what to do, when I heard a sound coming from downstairs. A sound that sounded much like the thing I just killed. I went to lock the upstairs door, and right when I did, I heard a loud slamming on the other side. The door didn't hold for long, and I saw long limbs trying to reach through the door. I ran to the window and looked down from the second story to see a descent about 15 feet down onto the snow. I turned around to see a very similar creature now completely inside the room, having broken down the door. My options were to jump from this height or to stay and definitely die a violent death. I took my chances from this height and jumped. This beast seemed preoccupied with whatever I just killed upstairs because instead of immediately following me, it waited. I laid in the snow thankfully unharmed. I anticipated a violent flurry of limbs to come out the window, but nothing. I quickly hurried to the only place I thought to be safe, which was the hangar. I reached the hangar and quickly entered, and I looked back at the cabin to see a deranged figure standing in the doorway of the cabin. It was tall but also slim. It stared at me with the seething hatred that I could feel radiating off its evil eyes. The distance between myself and the creatures was enough that I could easily enter the hangar before it should reach me, and I took this time to look at it. I felt like I was looking at something that shouldn't exist, and that I had entered a dimension that accommodated devilish beasts. The mood of complete adrenaline and fear slowly melted into extreme sadness and sorrow. I could feel myself being overtaken with powerful thoughts of increasingly negative thoughts and pain. Somehow, at the source of all of this, I knew that this creature was somehow responsible. I entered and closed the hangar door before I became overwhelmed with these feelings. I could feel my grip on reality slightly alter in a way I've yet to regain. I entered the hangar and started my truck. I activated the hangar door and got inside the truck. The hangar door opened, and I saw the creature had gone, and the cabin door remained open. I pulled the truck next to the cabin and listened inside for any signs of that thing. I think the prospect of driving many hours into the night to the nearest town was unappealing as seeing that thing again, so I risked it and went back inside. I lost my gun in all the commotion, but I did arm myself with a large steak knife. I could feel a dark cloud lift from earlier, and I could tell that whatever those two things were no longer here. I went upstairs to my room in a complete disarray and door was barely hanging on the hinge, but no sign of the body of the old man that once laid there. There were stains of blood everywhere, and claw marks on the floors and walls. The body of the small moose remained half eaten in the center of the room as a grim reminder of those hellish beasts. I called the next morning to the nearest police station to report what I saw. I was transferred a few times until I finally reached the chief of police, and he said that he wanted to come personally to my cabin to get more information and see the scene. The police came later that day, and I was forced to stay home rather than go to work. The police came, but when I told them my story of what had happened, they completely dismissed what I said about the beasts, and told me that either I was drunk or what I saw were rare breeds of bear that lived in the area. I was tempted to tell them what I saw, and that when I killed one of them, it turned into a man. But I was afraid that if I did, either they'd think I was crazy, or they actually thought I'd killed someone, and used the story of creatures as a cover. Needless to say, there were no help, and I made arrangements to leave Alaska for the next day. I wasn't able to get a new project manager for the company, and ended up outsourcing the responsibility to another staffing company to get someone else on board. I've yet to fly back to that cabin, since my only plane was still in that hangar. I don't think I'll ever go back. Considering what I saw, I would say that I'm just lucky to still be alive. Alright, well, I'll tell you what, that was one heck of a stream, guys. I don't know about you guys. This stream's been intense. This has been the stream of all streams. Thanks for everyone being a part of it. You guys are amazing. Thanks for the Duck Lord and Lars. You guys had an intense battle. It was intense. A legendary battle. But yeah, you guys are amazing. Thank you guys for joining the stream. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the stream. I know I did. I thought it was great. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the stories as well. This next video coming out is going to be intense. I hope you guys tune in for it. I'm thinking about doing a premiere. But yeah, I was telling you guys that I was thinking of doing a face reveal in the next video. So let me know what you guys think about that. But anyways, guys, until the next video, I will see you guys. Just watch my other ones. But I appreciate you guys. You guys are amazing. Thanks for joining the stream. And I will see you guys in my next video. Have a great evening.